We don't like it when a boss appears with little to no explanation in the game. One moment you're enjoying the story, and the next moment this thing shows up like an uninvited guest to a party. The bosses in this video basically have no story relevance at all and really came out of left field. Here are 10 bosses that felt completely out of place.
Henry's oldest son, Nick, of all people, is one of those kids. I hear he's a hell of a cop, but will he live to see the sunset? I don't know.
True Crime Streets of LA is a PlayStation 2 open-world game that took a lot of inspiration from Grand Theft Auto. It tells the story of Nicholas Kang, a tough cop who investigates a series of crimes in Los Angeles. The whole game is set in the real world and nothing extraordinary happens until you meet this boss. Here, you fight Ancient Wu, who suddenly spawns a dragon.
Yes, I've saved the best test for last.
Going from fighting crime in the streets of LA to taking on a dragon in some random basement is quite jarring. We get that the developers were inspired by the movie Big Trouble in Little China, but this somehow feels like one big hallucination.
Here comes a lead enema.
Spider-Man has fought a lot of strange bad guys over the years, so we shouldn't be surprised by some crazy-looking boss. However, the gorilla battle in the Amazing Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin feels completely out of place. This is no super mutant or evil bad guy, but just a normal gorilla who happens to stroll around in Central Park. One moment you're trying to catch the evil Kingpin who kidnapped your girlfriend, and the next moment you're beating up an endangered species for no particular reason at all. Who ever thought it was a good idea to throw a random gorilla into the game?
Oh, it's the end, all right.
Drakengard III is a hack-and-slash game with awesome dragon combat set in a typical fantasy world. The game has lots of endings and an extremely weird hidden final boss. The Branch D boss suddenly pulls you into a portal that transports you to modern-day Tokyo. Here you need to fight a giant statue in a black and white world. The gameplay suddenly turns into a rhythm game as you need to block lots of incoming attacks. Needless to say, nobody expected this boss to show up in a fantasy game about dragons. Earthbound is a classic RPG on the Super Nintendo that's all about American culture. The game feels like a classic kids adventure movie in the vein of The Goonies. It has a breezy tone that brings back memories of school holidays and long summers. That's why the final boss in this cheery adventure feels so out of place. Giganta literally is the stuff of nightmares. This terrifying being assaults you as a swirl of strange pixels and noises. We can't believe Nintendo put this scary thing in such a child-friendly game. When you think about Sonic, you instantly think of a gigantic bio-lizard fusing with a space colony and becoming the ultimate life form, right? You don't? Anyway, the bio-lizard is a crazy boss in Sonic Adventure 2 that shows up out of nowhere. You fight him 2 times in the game and they both feel completely out of place. This is such a weird boss with absolutely no lead up. And why a lizard? Although Sonic and Shadow's hand motions might be the weirdest thing about this whole battle. Final Fantasy IX is one of the best Final Fantasies in the series. However, it also has one of the lamest final bosses in the history of Final Fantasy games. Necron pops up completely out of nowhere at the end of the game. This guy was not mentioned once during the story, and the game doesn't even really explain what he is. He just shows up, spouts some nonsense about reducing the world back to nothing, and then you fight him. It just feels like Necron was shoehorned in for no particular reason. Revenge of Shinobi for the Genesis feels like Sega's answer to Ninja Gaiden. It's a game about a ninja who needs to save his captured bride from the hands of a criminal organization. Everything seems pretty normal until you meet the first boss. Every boss in this game is a copyright violation. There's Webbat, who's basically Batman and Spider-Man combined. There's a guy that turns green and becomes the Hulk. There's even a bootleg Godzilla in the game. The bosses all show up for no reason at all. It's like the developers watched a bunch of movies and literally put their favorite characters as bosses in their game. We love a bit of fan service from time to time, but Metroid Other M clearly overdid it with Fantune. This boss from Super Metroid makes his return in this game while no explanation is given for its reappearance. We have no idea why Fantune is chilling in space, but here we are fighting it again. The battle itself is pretty awesome, but that doesn't excuse the development choice. Fantune went from being a generic boss in the middle of a Super Nintendo game to a generic boss shoehorned in at the end of a Nintendo Wii sequel. It can be very jarring when a game suddenly switches art styles. Such is the case in the Japanese indie game Bunny Must Die, Chelsea and the Seven Devils. This Metroidvania game has a cute anime art style until you meet the cat boss. Here you fight an evil cat rendered in photorealistic graphics. The cat shows up without any explanation, but then again, it would be a pretty hard thing to explain anyway. Unfortunately, it was replaced with a sprite more fitting the game's art style in the English release. Hatofu Boyfriend is a dating sim where you date pigeons. You don't expect to be surprised when you're playing a game as weird as this one. However, the final boss still somehow managed to feel completely out of place. The game suddenly turns into a turn-based RPG and you need to fight an evil pigeon. Turns out this Japanese dating sim actually has a pretty interesting story about ancient evil. Who knew a game about dating pigeons could be this deep? Those were 10 bosses that felt completely out of place in their games. Do you know any other bosses that came out of left field? Let us know in the comments and please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
I must destroy all the evil the professor has